Hey guys, I'm Adam Caesar. This is another episode of Project Black T-Shirt. Today we're going to talk about 68 Kill, a new film directed by Trent Haaga, based on the novel by Bryan Smith, and starring Matthew Gray Gubler and AnnaLynne McCord. It's kind of horror adjacent because it is super duper bloody, super duper violent, but it is definitely like a crime or heist film or a Tarantino descendant in some way. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll give you a book recommendation like we always do. Alright, so I caught this film a little bit early, a little bit before its pre-release. It's been picked up by IFC Midnight. I think it played South by Southwest, played all these different film festivals, won a few awards. IFC Midnight's putting it out in August, I believe, so sometime in August you'll either be able to go out to a theater and see this or rent this VOD. 68 Kill is a movie that's been on my radar for quite a long while. I kind of knew it was getting made, I knew it was coming out, being a fan of novelist Bryan Smith, knowing this was in the offing, knowing it was from a book of his that I haven't read, which is actually kind of a rarity, and I know I'm probably like a bad fan because it's one of his crime novels, and I was like, I'll just read the horror stuff, but I was probably wrong to do that, but in a way, I went into 68 Kill very, very pure and very unspoiled, which is probably the best way to see this movie. I actually caught a screening at Wizard World Philadelphia, which is a Comic-Con that they host here out in Philly. They're all over the country. There's like a Sacramento and Albuquerque. Wizard World does all these bigger Comic-Cons. But this year they had Bloody Disgusting co-presenting Horror Fest with them, which is a horror film festival. I snuck away from the table where I was selling books with my buddy author Scott Cole, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to take an hour and a half and see this movie because I really want to see it. I'm really, really, really glad I did. 68 Kill, very simply, is a heist movie gone wrong, but it has a lot more on its mind than that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. 68 Kill, we have a character named Chip, our protagonist, his crazy girlfriend Lisa, and they basically, she talks him into trying to rob this guy that she's sleeping with on the side for money. And as you can guess, things go horribly, horribly, violently wrong. And the main kind of connecting tissue between all of these incredibly unfortunate events that befall Chip are beautiful women who talk Chip into doing things. Chip played by Matthew Gray Gubler, Liza played by AnnaLynne McCord, two recognizable faces, especially if you watch Criminal Minds or if you've seen AnnaLynne McCord in Excision, and they do a really good job in the film. It is almost, and it edges sometimes into broader comedy. It's a movie that feels like, and I don't mean this as a slight, but it feels like the movies that came out in the wake of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. It feels very much a later 90s kind of crime movie, hip crime movie, John. It's got quippy, unrealistic, but in a purposeful way, dialogue going on, and we've got characters acting not exactly the way that human beings would act, but clearly with that intention that like nobody knows people like Chip and Lisa. They are crazy people, and especially as we meet some of the oddball characters along the way. Lisa's brother, who's clearly a serial murderer. We meet all these different people, and they're caricatures, but not in the bad way of like, oh, these characters are caricatures. They're caricatures that are clearly meant to represent something and are clearly there to throw the audience off and subvert the audience's expectations of the kinds of characters we meet in these films. And the movie is brutal and brutally funny, and it's one of these things where I'm watching the film, or I sat watching the film, and for the first 15 minutes, I have to admit, I wasn't completely sold. I wasn't all the way in, but once things amp up in their absurdity and their ridiculousness, I just got more and more and more in, and the way that the escalation works in this movie, I was, totally 110% in by the climax. I was just like, whoa, this movie is ballsy and ambitious and crazy, and it's clearly a thoughtful movie and clearly has a lot to say, but it's one of those movies that while you're watching it, and like a lot of good kind of indie and exploitation films, you're not exactly sure that you agree with what it has to say, especially about gender and sexuality and relationships and the malleability of masculinity and going along with the women in your life, and you're like, is this somewhat wrong-headed? And I don't think it is, but you're always kind of questioning, like, is this movie okay to like? And that makes it exciting and makes it a little bit dangerous. Trent Haaga, if you're not familiar, this is, I think, the second film he's directed, second feature film he's directed after Chop, which is a little while ago, but he's been in the horror extreme kind of zeitgeist for a while because he wrote Dead Girl, which is a movie I really like. He wrote last year's, or a couple years ago, I guess, because I'm getting old, Cheap Thrills. He wrote a lot of really good movies, and his first, I just looked it up on IMDb, but his first feature writing credit is on Citizen Toxie, The Toxic Avenger 4, which is a early high school movie for me, which is, I love watching trauma alumni branch out and build and become a new thing, and I think that's kind of, as far as someone who maybe not aged out of, but maybe is not as big into trauma as I once was, I feel like that's one of those kind of joys of quote unquote growing up, is watching these filmmakers and these people that got their start there, almost a like Roger Corman type ascension. Watch them mature and watch them grow and watch them make films on their own. And 68 Kill is almost like the ultimate distillment of that, because it does feel like trauma writ large, larger budget, better script, bigger ideas. That's what this movie feels like to me, and I kind of had it was kind of a joy watching it. Another reason this movie was high on my list of things to see was because, of course, it is written by Bryan Smith, a horror novelist, someone who started with Leisure Books, someone who I've followed their career, basically the extent that the career has been going. I'm a big fan of his, and it always just, and it's weird to say this, but it always feels like a win for the home team when there is any kind of book adaptation going on. I remember a few years ago there were a bunch of Jack Ketchum adaptations in a row, and some of them were quite good, and I kind of missed those, and I wish there was that continuance of book adaptations. So 68 Kill makes me really, really happy. This seems like, as I stated earlier, I haven't read 68 Kill, but I've read a good amount of Bryan Smith, and this feels like such a Smithian film and such a distillation of the things that he likes, which are powerful, crazy ladies doing terrible things to people. This is his literary vision splattered onto the screen, kind of like those Joe Lansdale adaptations we've been getting, kind of like the Hap and Leonard or the Cold and Julys. This feels of a part with that. So if you are a horror literature fan and you're not even so much into the idea of like a crime thriller heist movie, don't worry about that. Just run out the second that you can rent this movie, the second that you can go see this movie and check it out, because you're going to be a big fan of it. So today's book recommendation is a tough one, because I do want to talk about a Bryan Smith book, and I do want to recommend you go get a Bryan Smith book, but I'm not exactly sure which one you might want to start with. There are three options. I'd say The Depraved would be my number one choice, because I'm pretty sure it's the book that I started with. There's also The Killing Kind, and there's also, if you're not so much into the exact extreme horror stuff and you want something a little bit more cerebral, there is Slowly We Rot, which is kind of an addiction zombie parable. It's wonderful. All three are wonderful. If you like this film and you're like, I want to check out what this guy does outside of the crime genre, I would definitely check out those three books. As always, I'll put links in the description. Put links in the description for everything I talk about. That's it for this week. I'm Adam Caesar. This has been Project Black T-Shirt. If you like this video, please hit like. If you really like this video, or you're just new to the channel, check out my other videos. I try to do a movie review and a book recommendation every weekish or so. Subscribe if you like that. If you're interested in my fiction, you can go to my website, sign up for the mailing list, and I'll send you a free couple short stories and a novel selection. But no pressure, guys. All right. I'll see you next week-ish, probably. Have a great night.